Simple Things by Teddy Swims. Beautiful song, keeps popping into my head, and I don't know, I love it. It's a real touching song. And we're back.
There we go.
Alrighty. Um, yeah. What were we talking about other than the beard?
Yeah. Oh, you asked what I have a question about. I guess for those who are, Tommy, who may not know, we often talk about Democrat, Republicans, stuff like that. I think a lot of people, and I've had this conversation recently, particularly in our community, don't know the history of Democrats and Republicans. Because at one point in history, the Republicans were kind of more like the Democrats now, and vice versa.
Yeah, it flips.
Especially when we get to talking about race and stuff like that. That's why I'm like, yo, just that stuff not even really important to me, about left wing, right wing, same bird to me. But but I think we get caught up in that. And like just growing up, listen to my grandparents, they were Democratic, you know what I'm saying? So I remember at 10, my grandma said, hey, this is what we vote here. When we go vote, you make sure you vote Democratic. Like this is passed down. So I'm quite sure it's probably the same for you. Like this is what we do. And you're gonna keep riding this wave and not really be able to differentiate, what you roll with versus what the party rolls with. You know what I'm saying? So as I gotten older, man, I'm like, you know what? I don't really care what the party says, what's right, what's wrong. You know what I'm saying? And that's just really crazy. I did think about this today about certain presidents or certain politicians. We make these promises only because for the sake of the party or for the sake of making a promise or being a politician. There's not really too many people that I'm gonna do this for the good of the people. The only person I thought about that I knew in my lifetime I was younger though was Jimmy Carter, and he didn't make it. He was not cut for it because he was so trying to do what's right per se. And he got out of there as soon as 4 years old. They was like, "Get out of here, we done with you." You know what I'm saying? So I guess my question more or less can you make it in politics by just doing what's right, doing exactly what's right for the people? Are you able to really make it for that way? Can you make it that way? Is that possible?
So absolutely. It's not going to be easy, and it definitely you have. So here's basically like, uh, this story's going to make me look really good. So I'm just gonna, whatever. There was a guy in my high school, my senior year, who. So here's the thing. I got into one fight my entire time in school because I've always been kind of a sweet kid. Don't like get along to get along. Whatever. And some dude was talking shit about my mama on the bus home from school. And so once we got off the bus, and so we
Yeah, put
wrestled
it
a
on
little
them.
bit. The bus driver came and separated us, and then we were actually like chill and boys, the next week because men can kind of once we've had that physical interaction and
Yeah, get
everything, we
all that
can usually kind of
testosterone out.
bury it. And unfortunately, that guy ended up passing away a few years later to gang stuff. So that was really sad to
Oh
see.
man.
But anyways, so I was never much of a physical person. Didn't like to beat up on any people. I was never a bully. Never ever a bully. I was too timid to ever be a bully. But in my senior year, there was this guy who hung out in our group who had a freshman female cousin who he would kind of beat up on and be a bully to. And it was a little bit of cousin family stuff to a degree, so I let it go for a while. And then one day he came up to get this girl's attention, grabbed her by the ponytail and jerked her head back, like went whoosh, and made her head jerk back like that.
Ooh.
In 3 seconds, that dude was against the wall, and I was screaming in his face, trying to not beat the living shit out of him. And he did not. I didn't see him for 3 weeks after that because he was so scared. So when you hurt someone around me, or if I feel like someone's being beaten or taken
Yeah.
advantage of, I'm gonna bring it. Like that. That's
Right.
all I gotta know. That's all I gotta know.
Because you obviously have a
So
care for people like you.
so
Yeah.
so
You.
so if I have to be violent, if I have to be an asshole, if I have to be mean, if I have to be not the nice guy Jimmy Carter was, or if anyone has to be that, you just got to understand if it's for the right purpose, you're allowed to be an asshole. Like was I being an asshole screaming in someone's face, putting him up against a wall? Yeah, without context, sure. But with the circumstances on the ground, I don't think anyone would ever say, "Oh, you were in the wrong." So authenticity is, I think, the key thing when you start playing to politics. So here's the thing. It's the hardest route to do it the right way. It's the hardest route because it's very easy to
Right.
tell people what they want to hear and never upset the people that are voting for you. It's very easy to say the powers that are already there that have money, I'm just going to go to them to get elected so I can stay in power and get paid well. And it's very easy to not fight every time you have to fight when you're in power against the other people that are working for the wrong thing. So it's a hard thing to do, but I think it's absolutely doable. And not even just doable, but like a lot easier than we think it is. It's just easier than that to do the wrong thing. And so a lot of people have chosen to go that route. A lot of people, like I said, I began this podcast with getting disenfranchised and disheartened and feeling like there wasn't hope. That happens, especially when you're in power and you're dealing with the people that are making the decisions and you realize how much they don't care about the people. We've seen many of the people that I think are the best at trying to do this go to Congress and make it about 3, or 6 years, 3 terms, and then bail, and then go work, some lobbying gig or a corporate gig or become a lawyer or whatever, because it's an easier life to get away from all this stuff and to just not be in the limelight and not try to be a public servant. But A, I think it absolutely can be done. B, 50%, 52% of people until 2020, 50% of people that can vote don't vote. So there's a huge pool of support that you can draw from if you can show people something different. And I'm trying to do this, show people something different than the normal way of doing politics, to try to say this is actually about the people, actually about solving these problems. In terms of personality, so personality traits tend to actually predict your political preferences quite a bit. If you're more of a compassionate person, you're more concerned with making sure everyone's taken care of, you're going to be more of a Democrat. If you're more aligned with what you need to do to make your life work and more focused on like learning from the traditional system how to operate, that's more so like the right wing kind of a bent in large part. But the truth is, all of our personality traits, if you chart them out, like measure them objectively and chart them out, it goes like this. So a bunch of people are in the middle and have normal sensibilities, normal personality traits, and can see the value in taking care of everybody and the value in doing your part to make sure you're handling your own business. And so if you can, and so once you kind of get to the people in the middle, there's no, so here's the thing, this is like the most untapped market ever, because literally no one is out there trying to be a moderate. There's maybe one guy, Tim Pool, who's an independent journalist, who I think is attempting to take that mantle on. But like no one's doing it. I think it's him and me. Those are the people that I'm aware of that are like trying to make this happen. And so we haven't, like I said, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. People haven't tried. And so what I've seen is everyone is receptive to what I'm bringing, because it's different, because it's authentic, because it's positive and trying to be for the people. And I try to be as fair and even-handed when analyzing these situations as I can. And I do recognize the good opinions and valuable opinions that come from all sides. It makes it like, that's the truth. And so when you're operating in the truth, it's kind of, it almost seems like magic, but it's just easy. Because I don't believe that the person who has an R or a D next to their name doesn't think poverty's bad, or doesn't think racism is bad, or doesn't think that, or that they just don't have good intentions. I just assume everyone wants this thing to work, and I just kind of operate from that perspective. I think there's people that like the fighting. There's people that like the tribalism and get stuck in it. But I think it's just because they genuinely believe they're on the side of the right, and the other side doesn't have a whole lot to bring to the table, and so it's very one-sided in that way.
Everybody's thinking that way. Whether you're Democratic or Republican, we both looking at each other like, are you wrong or you wrong? But I personally feel a lot of these things can be solved, but it's too many hands in the pot. There's too many big wigs got investments in it. So the bag got to exist, make profit.
So yeah, I sort of completely agree and completely disagree. I sort of completely agree and completely disagree with that. The
Okay, talk to me.
the hands are in the pot. The hands are in the cookie jar. They are robbing us blind, no question. And they have all the incentive and the power to try to keep that in place. But I've said this a few times, and the more I say it, the more I love it. I am a subscriber to the A Bug's Life philosophy. There's a lot more of us than there are of them. And so if we're united, if the people are united, if we understand in real common sense ways, real basic ways, what we can do to move the ball forward ourselves, we can do it. I was blessed to work collecting signatures for ballot initiatives. So if you want to get something on the statewide election, if you get enough signatures in California, it gets on there and then we can vote on it. I started collecting signatures for that when I was 17, about 10 years ago. And what I realized was if we knew what we needed to get done and we had the people working together to get it done, these things, just having citizens collect signatures to get it on the ballot so we could vote on it, and then we vote on it and we vote it through to make it law, that is how we fix the system without voting anyone out of office. That is something completely within the power of the people that can be used. It's used right now just to make money, just to influence things. Corporations, will pay people. I was being paid by corporations to collect signatures for certain things. That's how the system works. But if we had people that are willing to just participate and cooperate on real legislation together, then we can absolutely fix it that way. So it's not even about like policies on the ground, and the laws on the ground are what the game is. The people in power are just one of the mechanisms about how we create that stuff, but that doesn't mean we have to rely on them to fix these problems. We have these avenues to do it ourselves. And if you vote, say you vote in Utah, they voted to make medical marijuana legal. After they did that, the state, the Mormon state, the Mormon church in the state of Utah had some meetings and had some bad influences and stuff. They're tied in together to change the legislation to make it a little bit harder to actually enact and make it harder to get weed. And so when that happens, we need to be aware of it and react and vote those people out. If the people voice their opinion and say, we want this thing, and they vote it in, and then you try to push back against that or keep it from happening, well, then we got to vote you out. And then that gets to that point. If the voters are not paying attention, don't know what's going on, and don't care to put any effort into fixing anything, it doesn't matter anyways. It doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter who isn't. That's just the way the system is going to go. The people in power are going to take care of themselves and not respond to the people. If we have a voting base that's engaged and educated and knows what we need to get done and is focused and I always jump ahead of myself. So I'm like, it doesn't have to be me, but any person that is one individual that can articulate these ideas that people can get around and get behind can make it into a movement. Part of the issue with the Black Lives Matter movement is there isn't one leader. And so there's no one there to say, we don't stand for this. We do stand for this. We don't stand for these things. We do stand for this. What we're actually concerned with is police brutality. We want to have a conversation about qualified immunity and the way police officers aren't held accountable when they do something wrong. Instead of it being like, Black Lives Matter. Well, I think Black Lives Matter, so I'm all for it. And then other people are like, well, why just Black Lives? And then the other people more are like the actual organization Black Lives Matter has a lot of Marxist ties. And my only criticism there, because I actually think Marx and the Das Kapital and all that stuff, all of his writings are very thoughtful and interesting, and they dissect the world in accurate ways, semi-accurate ways. In order to get the revolution, if you're willing to burn the whole system down, a lot of people are going to suffer and die in bringing the system down. And they've explicitly said, the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement that have these direct Marxist ties, they've said they have Marxist ties. They're Marxist-trained activists is how they said it. They're explicitly saying on their website they want to bring Western civilization down. Now, they say it's the patriarchal, white supremacist central tenet of Western civilization. And so they're sort of taking one part of our history and saying, this is the whole thing, and then they're wanting to burn the whole system down. It's like there's things about our system that make us not China that obviously are important and should be preserved, or conserved if you're a conservative. Other areas, if you're a progressive, we do need to progress and make changes and and stuff like that. So I see both sides of it for sure. But with
Let me interrupt for a minute, because we kind of going towards another direction as it seems. What you were saying earlier about putting the power in our hands. You gave the example how you got signatures because the corporation paid you. All right. With that knowledge, you think the people in power don't know that? You don't think that they actually know that and use devices and methods to kind of keep people separated? And this is what I mean. You saying the people need education. You need to be educated on these things, how the effect change, how to get in touch with these people who represent us, how to go about doing that. Because a lot of us don't know. A lot of people know, even though we learned it in school, a lot of us don't know. Policies and laws. Here's the crux of the whole issue, is the policies and laws that's in place. We put our faith in these people who are supposed to represent us. A lot of times, let's go back to what I was saying earlier, they don't sometimes have our best interests at heart. Of course, they're going to tell us all this beautiful language and all this rhetoric. It's going to sound great. And so we give them everything. But when they get talk to lobbyists and talk to other people, it does no progress for us. So you once again have a cycle of generations of disenfranchised people. We don't have trust or believe in them, or we don't know how to get it ourselves. To even touch on what you said about the Black Lives Matter, we don't have any leaders anymore, because every time we try to have a leader, they're assassinated, they're dead, or there's some kind of way to make those leaders seem like they're not reliable people. They find dirt. They may have stole some money from their mama when they was 12. Oh my God, we can't trust that person. Oh my God. So it's always something where we're going to have leaders. And I think they know this. Well, I know they know this. So these are constructed things to keep these people divided, keep not only us, but keep the people in America divided. Because we put so much faith and trust in the system, and the system is working against us. So yeah, that's what you're saying in theory is right. It sounds great, but it's so many other factors to consider. There's so many things we have to put into context that creates a huge barrier for us to have that kind of success. You know what I'm saying? To even change, because it's the policies and laws that need to be changed. But do we see those things being changed anytime soon? I like to see it change. I'm hopeful. But how realistic is that? When you got people, like I said, with their hand in the jar, they're going to try to make sure that that doesn't happen if it's going to affect their bottom line. Their bottom line is the dollar. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I love it, but...
So you're dead on, man. Like, the system is intentionally designed to keep up to... So, one step back. Humans are by their nature tribal. We have our tribe. Right. There's people outside the tribe. There's us versus them. All these categories are automatic to us. We jump on it real quick. Then you have the system that can either enhance that tribalism or try to fight that tribalism. For as long as I have been analyzing it, like I look back into the history books and everything, pretty much as far as I could tell, we've always had a system trying to enhance our tribal nature and trying to amplify it to pin us against each other. Because if we're distracted fighting over things we're not actually disagreeing on, with the Black Lives Matter thing, I always just say, cops should not be allowed to abuse citizens, and they should be held accountable. If that was how it was phrased, there wouldn't be a lot of disagreement. But because of the way it's amplified and articulated and phrased intentionally, it's a very toxic back and forth. And we both have our pre-programmed ways to start getting mad about the other side trying to say what they're saying. And we never get to the actual substance of qualified immunity and how we actually hold cops accountable and all those things. So the system is designed against all this working intentionally, because that's how they stay in power. What we can do is within our, and I can already tell from the way you're talking now versus the first podcast, and this has happened with some other people, and it warms my heart and brings so much hope to me when I see this. When we change the way we talk and try to approach things to make it less tribal, to try to be about the one tribe, that negates what they're doing. That is how we fight it on that level, is to try to say the people you deal with in your life that you may disagree with, try to have that understanding and that heart and say, I don't think this person has evil in their heart or is trying to do the wrong thing. I think we just disagree with how we get to the same goal of, fully autonomous and wealthy and successful Black community. or all communities, all American communities, whatever, like the economics of it is, how does everyone have enough to be healthy and to get by comfortably and to be able to save and build for the next generation? That's sort of like the assumed goal for the economy. And then there's 1,000 little details that on how we get that brought about. But the I don't assume anyone is oriented, unless, I mean, the people in power, let's put them aside.
Okay.
Everyday folks. I
I'm
don't
about to
assume
say.
any of the everyday folks are against any of these basic sort of things. I think most people, especially in the United States, they love freedom. They believe in like equality under the law and like equality amongst people, and they believe in um, like common sense goals for these things. And so, if we can try to connect with each other on that level and on that ground, um, I think that can help a lot. So anyway, the shortest way of sort of summarizing all this is, you're right. That is exactly how the system works, and it's on purpose. But we do have tools as an individual and within our own families and communities to try to combat that. And the truth is, they can't make us fight. They can only try to tilt us into the direction of fighting. But if we say we're Americans first and Democrats and Republicans second, and white, black, and everything else in between, third or second or whatever you want to call it, then we've turned that whole thing on its head, and they can't pin us against each other like that anymore. And so the tribe, we're never getting rid of that tribal. So here's the thing. I'm not saying reject tribalism. I'm saying change your conception of your tribe because it's only, like, politically speaking, this is what's relevant. It's our country. It's a Team America. It's all Americans, black Americans, Asian Americans, white Americans. It's all Americans, Team America. We're trying to make this project work, where humans are free, able to live their lives however they want, write whatever beautiful poetry and art they want without the government being involved. And everyone should have a fair shot. Everyone should get a chance. I'm sort of, I sort of ran out of things to say, so I was sort of just throwing some
No,
platitudes
no,
out
you're
there.
good. Well,
But
I,
that's the
I
thing.
want
Like,
to add.
so, yeah, we got to fight
Well,
the tribalism by changing the tribe.
I would say maybe to enhance how the tribe view things versus changing the tribe. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, I think we all have our tribes, and some of us like cool with our tribes and very comfortable with our tribes. But maybe to educate, to enlighten our tribe, to have a broader context of things. I'm definitely with that. And you said we're all
Also,
American.
politics isn't everything. Like, what the corporate income tax rate should be, like, doesn't mean anything to your life in any meaningful way. It's not anything to do with your black identity. It's not it's just a meaningless tax rate, you know? So a lot of this stuff isn't even that important. A lot of this stuff isn't even that, like, tied into that stuff. But no, I see where you're coming from. Like, you can never get rid of that tribal nature, and
Right.
there's a comfort and a logic even to tribes, and having a community you're tight with and that you're connected with. But yeah,
Right.
for the sake of politics, we're on Team America, I think, first. I think that's the best way to
Well,
go.
I want to touch on this, and maybe we can. I got another meeting in a few minutes. Um, by all of us buying into the "We Are America," and I think this is going to tie into also how the Black Lives Matter started from. I think we've been, and I'm speaking once again from a person of the African American community, and what been passed down to me when I studied in history is that we as a community have been for years trying to say, hey, we are America too. Even Langston Hughes has a poem, we are America. Like, we're Americans too, but the treatment and how it's conveyed to us that we're not. You know what I'm saying? Like, we trying our
Mm.
best to show that we're part of this country as well. And every corner we turn, we getting told that we're not part of this. Or we subhuman. You know what I'm saying? You and I know different, man. If you get stabbed right now, we both gonna bleed blood. Our melanin just separates us. You know what I'm saying? But we've been trying to do that for years. Even now, if everybody, even just not even talking about the government, but people who's been conditioned by the government and the media and so forth, their perception of black people, we have to deal with that every day. We see that on a regular, and when we constantly treat it like we're not the same, we're not equal. So then it's a situation where you say we're American, it don't hit the same with me. because I don't feel American because you don't make me, not you, but I'm just saying in general, you don't make me feel American. When I ask for the civil liberties of the equal rights, you don't make me feel like I'm part of this. I don't feel like I belong in the house with you. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard for us to say that sometimes, you know what I'm saying, or to stand up and pledge allegiance, or you know, the whole thing with Kaepernick. You know, we feel that because we're not getting treated the same.
I pledge
And then,
allegiance to the country that enslaved my great grandmother.
right.
I
So that's what,
understand how it. Yeah, I get that.
yeah. So,
I get that.
but then even in respectfully protesting that, like Colin Kaepernick did, who, by the way, for those who don't know, was told by a Marine, a Caucasian Marine, to do that. You know what I'm saying? To take the knee. We can't even do that. Then they throw in the narrative, well, you saying something against the veterans. No, nah. A lot of us got uncles and fathers and brothers that served in the military. You know, so I got family in the military. I would never disrespect them because they made a choice to fight to protect the things that they believe in that make us American, that we're told that we're not. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, in a big scheme of things, it's a rocky slope, man. We feel disenfranchised, and it's going to take. We need, and like, brothers like you and people, it's going to take. We need y'all to talk to y'all. We need y'all to talk to y'all. Hey, let them know, hey, we human too. We want some of this pie too that we've been promised. They don't know we want this American pie. We want our slice, man. Talk to your folk. That's what we saying. Talk to your people, because we keep being sold this idea that we all part of this big nation. We all American. And when it's time to get treated as such, we don't get that. We don't feel that. Well, I'm just expressing what, you know, people I know grew up with, my elders, and what we feel. It's not the same. We don't get that. But we're told, hush up now. We're all American. Where? When? You know what I'm saying? Give that to us then. Then we'll sing Kumbaya, hold your hands. You know what I'm saying? But don't let go of my hand when you see your people walking around. You know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, dude, like 100%. And I think I want to touch on this because like I said, I've said this before. I think community is very important, but it's interesting because like there is this debate. I want to jump on a bunch of things. I'll try to get to. We wanted to get to the history of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party a little bit, or you had mentioned that a little bit earlier. The Democrat Party is like the oldest party in the United States. It's been around since the era of slavery, and it was in that era the party of slavery, the party of the South, the party of stuff like that. And lots and lots of Democrats were a part of the movement for Jim Crow and stuff like that. They were still very much a part of that. The first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln. Because that was an attempt to, because when you say you're a Republican, meaning you care about the republic, that comes with a bunch of stuff packed in. The main thing being, we have a democracy, but there's these things you can't touch even with the democracy. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom, the innocent until proven guilty is just sort of a commentary on the world. You can't know someone's guilty unless you have hard proof, and even then, like, you can't know for sure, so you should err on the side of innocent until proven guilty. That's a whole side rant. But anyways, yeah, so if you want to look at the history so people talk about the history of America being racist. If you want to look at the history of the parties and kind of have that same kind of an assessment, definitely the Democrats come out worse in that. And if you look at the way I conceive of modern white supremacy, modern systemic racism is very much a bipartisan beast. I told you that before. And so if you look at the communities, especially the black communities specifically in the United States that are suffering, lots of murders, like high murder rate, high drug addiction rate, lots of sexual assault and abuse, and then you have incarceration, then you have, just lack of economic opportunity, poor education, all of this stuff. A lot of it converges in Democrat-run cities today. And I don't think it's because there's any Democrat saying screw black people. I just think it's because when you cannot see how your policies might be hurting this community you care about, because you can't be the racist side, it's resulted in this thing where lots and lots of black communities are suffering under Democrat leadership. And the assumption is that the Democrat leadership is the way out. And then we'll touch on the Larry Elder thing. The LA Times called him the black face of white supremacy. A newspaper called him the black face of white supremacy. And so with that kind of stuff, I start getting into, like, to me it hits notes of the Uncle Tom type of a thing where it's like he's not actually against the black community, but if they can make you think he is, if they can make you think he is, or that his policies are somehow directly against the black community, then he gets that Uncle Tom stank, and you think, but in reality, it was about politics. And so this is where it deviates. Like all of the things we talk about, if the end of the conversation sort of is, and that's why you have to be a Democrat, or and that's why you have to be a Republican, especially with this kind of stuff, I feel like it's not worthwhile. Like the best example, police forces are run by the local institutions, the local police command, the local mayor who chooses the local police command. All that stuff is locally run. And so you can go to the national level and say whatever the hell you want to say, but if the local people aren't changing the things happening there, the LA Police Department, the New York Police Department, like you can't do anything at the national level. And if you look at like who's in charge of those cities and who's staffing those police command units and stuff, it's the Democrats. Like there's not even an argument at this point. Like I said, the black community votes 95% in favor of Democrats. So where black people are, Democrats tend to be in charge. And the black community has been suffering in an escalating way for like 30, 40 years now. Like there was the previous trend up until the Civil Rights Act that sort of was like held down and you guys were making your way back up. And then there's this thing that happened in the 70s, and that this ties into Jimmy Carter. In the 70s, a whole new system was brought in to hold all poor people down, and it had an overlap because black people were more poor than everybody else. So even though it wasn't a direct attempt to oppress black people, if you know X policy affects Y people and Y people are 90% black, what do you think is going to happen, right? Like they knew what they were doing when all these policies were instituted. And so things like the murder rate in the black community was not always the case. Criminality in the black community was not always the case. A lack of economically being sort of held back or not making progress was not always the case. From 1940 to 1960, the black community went from 87% poverty to 47% poverty. So like 4 out of 10 black families or black people were lifted out of poverty in 20 years because the system was working the right way for them. Even with Jim Crow, they were still able to make that progress. And this new system that came in after the 60s, after the Civil Rights Act, not coincidentally, right after the Civil Rights Act, is a new system holding people down, and that very much involves the Democrats on the welfare front, on the education front, in many cases on the policing front, because of the local issue there. And on the Republican front, you know, the war on drugs is absolutely a Republican thing. Republicans are happy to say if you're a criminal, you're a piece of shit, even though they don't understand that like they believe in limited government and that laws can be corrupt and not okay. But then they'll also say once you've broken these laws, now you're a corrupt criminal piece of crap. Like Republicans very much fall in line with that sort of way of looking at the world. And then you have outright just racist people, just straight up racist people, and that's mostly on the right. And so when it comes to the individuals being racist and hurting the black community, and when it comes to hyper incarceration, the war on drugs, and stuff like that, the right wingers are absolutely guilty, but that's not the whole system. That's not the whole system at all. The whole system that is designed to hold, and the reason why they want to do this is because if they keep us held down and poor, we have to work as hard as possible to get out of that. So the people that are paying us low wages and we're working a lot get a lot more profit. And then also they can keep us fighting, because if we're stuck suffering and dependent and we can't get our way out, like you're not gonna like build anything if you're constantly trying to catch up. So
well, let me interject for a minute.
I sort of rambled a lot there. So yeah.
No, you good. And I know your history. I know you really come from a conservative background, so I know you quick to pinpoint a lot of democratic flaws and stuff like that. But I applaud you for noting the war on drugs that the Republicans did. I'm from the perspective like they all bedfellows to me. You know what I'm saying? I don't, and to be, I guess, factual about it. Even the places where the Democrats heavily run, think about which part mandate the laws and policies. Congress, Senate, I mean, who does all that? Think about the years where the Republicans controlled that. You know what I'm saying? We want to get technical. Think about the years the Republicans controlled that, the policies and what got passed, stuff like that. So we can go back and forth about who's responsible for what. My thing is, all of them guilty. All of them guilty, all of them racist. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to sit here and go down the line historically and say, well, this place is bad because Democrats was in charge of it. Nah, because I can go back and say, well, they were only doing some of the things that were passed by Congress. The Republicans were in charge. To me, it doesn't make no difference. They all are racist to me. At the end of the day, they didn't have our interests at heart. You know what I'm saying? We can go back to when Lincoln was assassinated, with Andrew Johnson, who was a staunch racist, which I never understood that in politics. Back then, you got your VP got to be an opposite party of you. Made no sense to me. Why would you have this guy who you know is racist as your VP? So when you die, he's gonna take over and get rid of everything you did. He let all the officers live that they're supposed to be hanged for after the Civil War. He helped introduce the Jim Crow and all that.
Several of the presidents, including one of them that's like newer-ish in the early 1900s, late 1800s. I think it was the late 1800s. He was literally sworn into the Klan in the White House.
That's so like that makes no sense to me.
For sure. For sure.
But all of it to me, and that's why I don't really go into the, especially as I've matured and got older. I don't care no more if you're Republican or Democrat. They all were racist. They all had a hand into crippling our capabilities of advancing in this country to be human, to give it those civil liberties, those civil rights. They all are bedfellows to me, and that's just my whole point.
I think I have a. So here's the thing. The intent and the heart and the motivations of Democrats, I think, are largely very laudable. And on the Republican side, the intentions and the feelings and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot more questionable. I think there's a lot more people that I think are actual racist, out and out racist, or are trying to hint at racist stuff. And so, but when you flip that and you say, not personality, policy, then I think it's flipped. I think on the policy front, Republicans are doing a little bit to perpetuate the systemic racism, but I think because I'm one-sided because of the policy focus. If it was about the people, I'd be like, nah, Republicans are the racist ones, like no question. But if it's about the policies and the impact on the community, and like you said, and this is a side note, if you take away racist assholes, the best interests of the Black community and the best interests of the people are more or less the same. Once you take away that racist component of that, we all want to make money, we all want to not get murdered, not get raped, all that kind of stuff. We're all united in that way more so than we're divided. Anywho, so I definitely, the bias you picked up on is real. My bias against the policies of the Democrats and not quite as heavily against the policies of the Republicans is real. I think partially it's because I'm a reactionary. I react to the game as it is. I don't necessarily always. So like the left wingers I see are always talking about race and always talking about how bad the intent is on the other side and how hateful the other side is and all this. And so I think I am reacting to that to say, no, actually, y'all are doing some shit and you should address it instead of, talking about how bad those other people are. Look into your own neighborhood, look in your own home before you start, going that way. But that's a reactionary way of looking at it. It's definitely too policy focused, not so much about the people. And on the people front, like I said, it'd be flipped. I would be talking about it totally differently if it was about the people, not so much the policy.
Let me share some reactionary with you about how a lot of people, especially during the 80s, particularly with the Reagan years, how reactionary we were. We didn't too much care for Republicans because we saw that and that mess go on. We saw the crack get pumped in our communities. You know what I'm saying? There was a community. I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina. There's a place, a beautiful place. I grew up. My family stayed there. It's a little small section called Lakeview Manor. Like Lakeview Manor was like a housing situation that was established for African Americans, the middle class, particularly like late 50s, early 60s. And it was a beautiful community. And I remember being little, going, it was like a little recreation area, pool, these nice fancy houses. You know, these middle class working African Americans had been able to afford it. My aunt stayed there. I mean, it was beautiful. And I used to go there. It's like a huge cul-de-sac community. When crack came in, when crack was introduced, that was gone, man. That beauty was gone. You know what I'm saying? Some of the people that worked hard to get that had to leave out. It was a drug infested area, and it just flipped my whole just perspective of that community. That ability for us to have something nice was gone, and large because Ali North and Ronald Reagan allowing all these drugs get pumped up in the communities, United States, because they always, it was a game, man. They allowed it to happen, but we were convinced that they didn't have that because we think our country and still one of the best places to live, but they had some dirt. America got a lot of dirt. They try to sweep under the rug, and we try to pretend it didn't happen. And that administration alone was responsible for allowing these drugs to get pumped in here because they were doing underhand under the table business within the Contras, with Afghanistan, all kind of stuff. They trade weapons back and forth, but that don't get brought up. But that